Welcome back to Closing Arguments. I'm Julia Janae, in tonight for Vinnie Politan, who is out shooting the new season of Accomplice to Murder. We're beginning this hour in New Jersey, where Christopher Gregor is accused of abusing his 6-year-old son to death. Corey Micciolo died on April 2nd, 2021. And this was just 2 weeks after Christopher Gregor was caught on camera forcing his son to run on a treadmill, despite the child falling off multiple times. And as a result of that video, Gregor was initially arrested on July 7th, 2021 for endangering the welfare of a child. But it wasn't until after consulting a forensic pathologist who re-reviewed the case and ruled the death a homicide that Gregor was charged with the murder of little Corey back in March of the following year. Now, that expert, state witness Dr. Thomas Andrew, took the stand on day 5 of the trial and reestablished his findings regarding the death. But today, the defense had the chance to call their own expert to refute that finding. The legendary Dr. Michael Baden was on the stand. And if you're unfamiliar with the work of this forensic pathologist, he gave a brief outline of his credentials when he took the stand, and it's extensive.
I'm a graduate of the City College of New York. And New York University School of Medicine, where I got an MD degree. I was then intern, resident, and chief resident, first in internal medicine, then in pathology at Bellevue Hospital Medical Center in New York City. At a federal level, I was asked to be the chief forensic pathologist by the U.S. Congress, House of Representatives, on a special committee that was set up to reinvestigate the deaths of President John F. Kennedy and Dr. Martin Luther King.
Have you ever been published?
Yes, I've been published some 80 or so articles and a couple of books and a number of chapters in textbooks on forensic pathology.
Have you ever appeared on television?
Yes.
Did you have your own show on HBO?
Yes.
What was the name of that show?
Autopsy.
How many times do you think you've testified in courtrooms?
Over the 50, 60 years, many hundreds of times.
Have you ever testified for the prosecution?
Usually, most of my testimony has been for the prosecution.
Dr. Baden has also been involved in the autopsy review for Michael Jackson and George Floyd, and he was a major witness in the O.J. Simpson trial. But today, he testified for the defense, disagreeing with the findings of the state's expert. So let's take a listen to what Dr. Baden had to say regarding Corey's death.
Did you review a Dr. Feingold's report?
Yes.
Did you review a video of a treadmill from a gym on March 20th of 2021?
Yes.
Did you review an additional video from the same gym taken on March 29th, 2021?
I did.
Okay. Now, do you have an opinion after you reviewed all the material in regard to Corey's cause of death?
I do.
Can you tell the jurors what that opinion is as to Corey's cause of death?
I think that Corey's cause of death has been confused because of extensive injuries caused by the CPR process. That I agree with a part of Dr. Ragasa's cause of death that indicates injuries to the heart and other organs, which I think is are typical vigorous CPR injuries. And I don't agree with that part, but I do agree with the inflammation and sepsis part of his diagnosis. The inflammation and sepsis part of Dr. Ragasa's diagnosis refers to inflammation in the lung and the finding on culture of bacteria in the lung that could cause pneumonia and sepsis. So I think my cause of death is different than Dr. Regassa's in recognizing, in my opinion, that the injuries are all CPR injuries. Nobody can live for more than 2 minutes with a 1.5 inch laceration of the heart. He had an 85% oxygen level, which is very low. All of us here would have about 97% or higher. The high white count, 29,000, mostly polymorphonuclear cells, which are the cells that respond to a bacterial infection. And then what I also base my opinion on is the CAT scan finding of pneumonia also present. So I think all together, the most likely cause of death was a very severe, rapid pneumonia. My opinion would be that the manner of death, for all the information that we have, is natural.
To weigh in on the testimony that we heard from Dr. Michael Baden, let's bring in our own expert. Joining us now, board-certified forensic pathologist Dr. Priya Banerjee is with us. Dr. Priya, it's good to see you. I want to ask you about what Dr. Baden said about his cause of death and manner of death. He said that it's severe, rapid pneumonia that killed Corey Micciolo, lung inflammation and sepsis. He also said that that blunt force trauma that the prosecution's expert said caused the death was actually caused by the CPR of people trying to revive little Corey. Your thoughts on that part of the cause of death from Dr. Baden?
Sure. I mean, I'm a practicing forensic pathologist myself, so in my many years of experience, not as many as Dr. Baden or Dr. Andrew, but it's very common in handling pediatric cases that this is sort of the competing factors, right? One is it the abuse or is it some other cause? CPR is often blamed as a scapegoat, if you will. Now, not everything that's found on a body is a true injury. We have to really analyze it and see if it's CPR related. I think when we, whittle it down, all of these injuries in various parts of the body had a reaction. So the acute inflammation, I think this went on for a lengthy discussion, meaning the body has had time to recognize that there is an injury, no matter how small or severe, and reacted to it with what we call acute inflammation, the first soldiers, the first cells to react to an injury. This is a very methodical sort of step-by-step approach that our bodies take. And so once you have that, you can't have that sort of after the patient's dead with CPR. The body has to live long enough for this to happen. And I think, unfortunately, this kid, was under long-term, chronic, this is what we call it, multiple episodes. And so he's been, different parts of his bodies are affected at different times. So it's quite possible that the pneumonia has been sort of brewing and then accelerated. And then you have these more severe sort of blunt trauma on top of that. But nonetheless, the body has recognized it and reacted to it, which does not make it CPR related.
Now, what we heard earlier in the testimony today from Dr. Baden, he stated that no one could have lived for more than 2 minutes with a heart laceration the size of Corey's. He's saying that it was the CPR that did it and not something that could have happened many hours beforehand when the child was in his father's care. But Dr. Thomas Andrew, the state's expert, testified to a much different opinion. Let's listen.
In Corey's case, it was from the time he was injured till the time he was pronounced at 5:00 p.m. It's not going to be the same for every individual. Some people would die sooner. Some people may die after a longer period of time. It would certainly not be instantaneous.
So in Corey's case, you're saying that he could have lived for 4 hours with an 1.5 inch laceration to his heart.
Given where it is and what it is, yes.
And you're saying that to a reasonable degree of medical certainty.
I am.
So, Dr. Banerjee, your take on this heart laceration. Could it have been a slow bleed, like the state's expert says, where it happened with his father, then by the time he brought him to the hospital, he was bleeding out? Or, as Dr. Baden said, it would have happened in 2 minutes. So if it happened with the father, Corey would have already been dead even before he had been taken to the hospital.
Sure. So, I mean, these are challenging questions or challenging injuries. They are bad. You know, it's a very significant impact that causes both lacerations to the liver and or the heart. Now, again, it's had to be more than minutes for the body to react to it. And I can't tell you whether it's, you know, a few hours or 4 hours. That's not as accurate. You can't be that specific. There is variability. And I think usually kids are very resilient. And I think it's amazing how much this kid endured and still, you know, survived for days. I think ultimately it's sort of a combination of everything, but I don't think one of these lacerations, either to the liver or the heart, was, again, instantaneously or rapidly fatal. You know, the rapidity would be if it's full thickness, if there's a lot of heart blood that gets collected around the heart. I think that's what causes rapid death, like when you have penetrating injuries. This, I think, was not as deep, like not the whole wall of the heart. And for, you know, a very deep, you could have a long laceration that's not as deep, if you will. And so maybe the rate of bleeding is less, and the kid can sort of accommodate. He doesn't have any natural heart disease. He can sort of, the heart can pump more, he can raise his blood pressure. If you recall, there was a high heart rate. That's also seen with sepsis. So I think there's multiple things going on. But otherwise, you know, he's probably compensating, is what we call it medically, for the injuries, and then unfortunately his little body just gives out.
What it's sounding like is this is going to be a really difficult decision for this jury, because they have two experts who are saying things that can be true, that are possible in this case. Dr. Priya Banerjee, thank you so much for your time, for giving us your expert analysis. We're going to talk more about the Gregor case and Dr. Baden on the stand with our think tank. They are on standby. Ann Bremner, Rick King, Michael Sterling, they are all here ready to weigh in on this battle of the experts. That's next.
We are underway in the trial of doomsday prophet Chad Daybell.
Prosecutors say they will seek the death penalty against him.
Investigators have recovered human remains at Chad Daybell's residence.
There's no way, Logan, I can never come up with this.
His wife, Lori Vallow Daybell, has already been convicted.
Now, will her husband end up with the same fate?
It's just so hard to know where the truth ends.
It's the doomsday prophet, Chad Daybell, on trial.
A number of doctors testified here about numerous injuries to Corey's body. We had a bruise to his chest, a bruise under his chin, an abrasion to his hip, some light bruising on his back. Did you see those injuries?
Yes.
In your opinion, did any of these injuries have anything to do with Corey's death?
They did not.
We had a heavy hitter expert on the stand today on behalf of a defendant who's accused of doing the unthinkable, killing their own child. And we have a reaction now that we want to get on this battle of the experts that took place in the case today against Christopher Gregor. Our think tank is here. Joining us, trial attorney and fellow of the American College of Trial Lawyers, Ann Bremner. Also with us, trial attorney and former police lieutenant Rick King, and criminal defense attorney and former federal prosecutor Michael Sterling is with us. Good to see all of you. What a day it was inside of this courtroom. And let me get your reaction to Dr. Michael Baden on the stand. I mean, for lawyers, especially people in the legal field, people who are true crime enthusiasts who have followed cases over the years, just his name alone says something.
Yeah, I mean, he's amazing. I mean, he's the man. I mean, there were 3 top pathologists for many, many years. Always Dr. Baden, always Dr. Spitz, always Dr. Weck. both Dr. Spitz and White unfortunately passed this year. They were well into their 90s and icons and testified in my trials, both of them, different trials. You can't get any better than this witness. I mean, there's just, I don't know how the prosecution is going to win the case with Baden on the other side. And of course, his wife was the prosecutor inspector for the jury. She hung the jury. There's a movie about her. He's brilliant. He's experienced. He's a leader, and he's reasonable.
Absolutely. Now, Rick King, I want to ask you, though, could he cut a different way because he is so high profile? Does that perhaps suggest something to the jury who may be wary of somebody of means, who has wealth, who's able to hire someone who's such a big deal? Is that going to perhaps rub them the wrong way if they even recognize him, if they are not someone who has been following legal cases all of these years?
I mean, I think you have to be living under a rock not to have heard of Dr. Baden. However, that being said, you know what I like about him and what I think he offers is, oftentimes as criminal defense attorneys, when you hire an expert, they are criminal defense experts. And Dr. Baden comes in and says, hey, most of my cases have been for the prosecution. So when you have an expert that can say that and can tell the jury that they've been on the other side most of the time and now they're here, I think that lends an air of credibility. And I like that when they're able to say that. I think that's important.
Michael Sterling, I have two questions for you. One, we have Christopher Gregor not testifying today, saying that he's not going to testify in his trial. Do you think that was a good decision? Also, Dr. Baden's team, or Dr. Baden with the defense, they didn't mention the O.J. Simpson trial at all, as far as his resume or things that he's been on. Do you think that was intentional?
I'm gonna start with the latter. Julie. Yeah, it was absolutely intentional, right? I mean, you've got this, you know, one of the most renowned, as Rick and point out, is you're talking about one of the most renowned, you know, forensic pathologists in the country, and his testimony is key, right? And it's always interesting to me when I see someone who usually testifies for the prosecutor, you finally get the opportunity to have them testify for the defense, and all of a sudden the prosecution has to question their credibility, right? Because this person has spent their entire career being someone who essentially helped prosecutors win their case. So, I mean, I think that it was intentional that he didn't mention that particular case, because obviously you don't want to inflame the jurors. You don't want them to have any misinterpretation of what his findings were and what he's done in the past. And I also think, so to answer your first question, I also think obviously you use 98, 99%, and Rick might agree with me, your defendant does not testify, right? That's one of those things that you just don't do, right? I mean, I tried a case here on Court TV that was broadcast live, and my defendant testified. That was the 1%, but you usually don't let your defendant just usually doesn't testify, and and when I was having this conversation with someone just yesterday, Julie, and I was explaining to people, it's not because people think all the time like if you want to tell the truth, like you just tell it, right? But a lot of times, like, the truth is complicated. A lot of times, you know, the defendants, they're not as articulate. A lot of times they may have a stuttering problem. They might have a difficulty explaining what happened. So it's not just because that they don't want to tell their side of the story. It's a lot of times it's because you're trying to protect their rights and trying to make sure that the truth comes out unabashed, unadulterated from any stuttering effects, from any speech impediments, from anything that could potentially harm your case.
And a lot of people saying they don't know what he could have said on the stand that would have made what we see in that Treadmill video okay, and that would have been a problem.